I always find this such a difficult question because even if you look at, feature fiction films, there's such a wide variety even within that, grouping. You have, romantic comedies, horror films. So even within fiction films, you have so many different types of music that you might be called upon to write. And likewise with documentaries, you have some that are more kind of verite, some that are more talking heads, and some that are more like imagistic.
When you start a documentary, and perhaps maybe it's temp with music from Hans Zimmer or anybody doing a narrative film, you can, once that piece of music is in the documentary, it can almost shift into being documentary music in a way. Just by the fact that it may be over some old black and white footage, or just the setting determines the intent of the music.
Information hits the head and music hits the heart, and no matter what you're doing, whether it's to score a conversation, a doc, or a narrative, or whatever we do, we're there to make people feel something, and a story is a story, and you got to keep people's interest, and you also, especially in a documentary, if people are being very left brain and cerebral, you have just one note on. We had one scene in the hearing, with the Anita Hill documentary, where there was a statement about the fact that Anita Hill really was on track to become a Supreme Court justice herself, and that her whole life was derailed by what happened with her courage to speak the truth. And I knew that needed to have heart, and so just one note with the right tone, just gave you that little extra moment to feel something, and that's what you're always trying to do with music. It's just to bring the heart to it.
Also, documentaries are so noisy, so it's always interesting to see what gets swallowed up, purely technically, what sounds and tones get swallowed up. And what actually plays, which is very different from dramatic films.
I think there's also an ethical question in documentaries. For example, you have in a documentary, imagine you have a very personal scene. A character tells his or her story about a traumatic experience, and then would you try to embellish it with music? It could certainly be pushy and at times not ethical, really. While in a regular feature film, this traditionally would be the moment when we want to actually create, so to say, synthesize, if I may, a certain emotional feeling, and then we would be justified to use music to empower the performance. But when this is not a performance, when this is something real, I found it sometimes problematic doing music for a scene like this.
With my experiences with documentaries, the big difference between that and doing a narrative film, ironically, is that when you're working on a documentary, all of the music, to me, in my mind, stays within the confines of the overall narrative. And the music doesn't, at least in the documentaries that I've worked on with Spike, they don't have to be scene-specific. It's really about the overall story that you're trying to tell, whether it was Four Little Girls or When the Levees Broke. And in film, while you have that overall story, there's a lot of detail you're responsible for in terms of character development, pushing the storyline, and all of those things. And that can become a technical challenge in terms of what it is you're going to write. And in documentaries, the technical challenge for me is to enhance the narrative, but to stay out of the way of the story.
I'd never thought of music as being nonfiction music or fiction music. And I feel that most of the films here, which are nonfiction movies or documentaries, that they're as character-driven and as dramatically structured as a fiction movie. So I think I work with composers, it's really looking at the characters and the dramatic flow and having music support that aspect. So it's music to me.